Behind a moss-covered gate in the hills of Surrey lies a home where time seems to pause. It's not just any country house. It's a 1910 Italian-style villa once bought for just over $1 million. But what's it worth now, decades later, after becoming the quiet refuge of a man who changed the sound of modern music? Today, we step beyond the red brick walls of Eric Clapton's timeless estate and into the soul of the blues legend himself. From his hidden mansion and million-dollar cars to his journey through fame, heartbreak, and healing, this is a story carved in melody and silence. Before the world called him slow hand, before tears in heaven made grown men cry, before sold-out arenas and screaming guitar solos, Eric Clapton was just a quiet boy in the quiet village of Ripley, Surrey. But even in that small corner of England, something stirred beneath the silence. Born in 1945, Clapton entered the world under a cloud of confusion. Raised by his grandparents, he spent years believing they were his real parents, while his actual mother slipped quietly out of the frame. That sense of emotional distance, of not quite belonging, planted something deep in his soul. A wound, a hunger. And then came the guitar. At 13, he received a German-made Hoyer acoustic. It should have been magic, but it wasn't. The steel strings were too harsh, the action too high, the sound unforgiving. Frustrated, young Eric gave it up, but the strings hadn't finished with him. 2 years later, the guitar called him back, and this time, he answered. Instead of top 40 hits, Clapton immersed himself in the raw, emotional world of American blues. B.B. King, Muddy Waters, Robert Johnson. While other teens danced to pop, Clapton was learning how to feel, one bend, one vibrato at a time. Without a formal teacher, he trained obsessively with a Grundig reel-to-reel recorder. He'd play, record, rewind, critique, repeat, hour after hour, day after day. He wasn't just chasing sound. He was chasing something real, something that could speak the language he'd never been able to say out loud. By 16, Clapton was busking in London's West End, playing on sidewalks for pocket change. But what he earned in coins, he tripled in experience. Soon, the world began to notice. In 1963, Clapton joined the Roosters, his first real band. The gigs were small, but the fire was real. Later that year, he joined the Yardbirds, gaining a reputation as one of the most exciting young guitarists in Britain. But when the group veered toward commercial pop, Clapton walked away. Why? Because fame meant nothing to him if it meant losing the blues. He found his voice with John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, where his tone became legend. So much so, London graffiti began to appear. Clapton is God. Then came Cream, the power trio with Jack Bruce and Ginger Baker that would redefine rock itself. Songs like Sunshine of Your Love and White Room weren't just hits. They were revolutions. Clapton's solos soared, wild, unpredictable, spiritual, but behind the walls of feedback and fame, tension grew. By 1968, Cream dissolved under the weight of its own brilliance. Restless, Clapton joined Blind Faith with Steve Winwood, another supergroup, another short-lived spark. It lasted just 7 months, but the next chapter, it would define him. In 1970, driven by heartbreak over Pattie Boyd, the wife of his friend George Harrison, Clapton formed Derek and the Dominoes. Their album, Layla and Other Assorted Love Songs, birthed one of rock's most iconic cries of longing. Layla, a blistering riff, a broken heart, and a legend cemented. Through the 70s, Clapton softened. His sound mellowed, blending blues with reggae and pop. 461 Ocean Boulevard featured a smooth, chart-topping cover of Bob Marley's I Shot the Sheriff, introducing reggae to American rock radio. But behind the studio doors, darkness lingered. The late 70s and early 80s saw Clapton spiraling into addiction. Alcohol, heroin, self-destruction. He was slipping, and the world feared he wouldn't return. Then, redemption. In 1982, Clapton entered rehab. Emerging fragile but focused, he released Money and Cigarettes, a wry title for a man rebuilding from scratch. But tragedy hadn't finished with him. In 1991, his 4-year-old son Connor fell to his death from a Manhattan high-rise. The grief was immeasurable, but from it came Tears in Heaven, a song of unimaginable pain and raw vulnerability. It became a global anthem of mourning and love. The following year, Clapton stripped everything down for Unplugged, an acoustic album that won 6 Grammys and reintroduced the world to a softer, wiser slow hand. And he never stopped evolving. In 2000, he joined blues hero B.B. King for Riding with the King. In 2005, he reunited with Cream for a string of sold-out concerts. Through decades, Clapton remained true to his muse, never chasing trends, always chasing truth. Over 60 years, more than 3,000 concerts, dozens of albums, and a sound that touched generations. But where does a man like Clapton go when the spotlight fades, when the crowd falls silent, and the final encore fades into memory? He goes home, to the countryside of Surrey, to a 1910 villa called Hurtwood Edge, where time slows down and peace plays the final note. A state in Surrey. What does peace look like for a man who once made the world scream with 6 strings? For Eric Clapton, it's not a Manhattan penthouse or a Malibu mansion. It's Hurtwood Edge, a country estate nestled in the green, fog-kissed hills of Surrey, just miles from the very village where he was born. Built in 1910, the home carries the quiet grandeur of an old Italian villa. You can feel the century-old soul in every red brick, in the ivy-covered facade, and in the way the sunlight filters through its checkerboard tiled halls. Clapton bought the property decades ago, reportedly for just over $1 million. A surprising sum at the time, perhaps. But what's it worth now? After decades of being the private retreat of one of music's most revered legends, could you even put a price on Serenity like this? As you step through the wrought iron gates, time slows, the air shifts, and the noise of the outside world, of headlines, of fame, fades like the last notes of a concert encore. This house isn't massive in a modern sense. It doesn't flaunt itself, but that's exactly the point. The terrace, wrapped along the southern side, is where Clapton has spent countless afternoons, guitar in hand, surrounded by close friends in countryside silence. The stories that have been sung here, the laughter that's echoed through the hedgerows, aren't recorded. They're just felt. Inside, the house whispers elegance. Checkerboard floors lead to wood-paneled rooms that smell of aged books and clean firewood. The furniture isn't flashy but purposeful. A soft armchair here, a worn leather sofa there, and in almost every room, a guitar rests quietly, as if waiting for a thought to become sound. Out back, the land rolls gently toward the woods. A garden, partly wild, partly sculpted, grows freely beneath the English skyline. Clapton often walks here, alone. No cameras, no applause, just birdsong and memory. This isn't just a house. It's a place where pain has been processed, where songs were born, and where a man, once broken, once idolized, found space to simply be. And in that stillness, maybe even joy. But step beyond the garden gate, and you'll find another side of Clapton's life. One not made of stone or soil, but of horsepower, steel, and soul. If a man's soul could be parked in a garage, Eric Clapton's would purr in Ferrari red. Because beyond the serenity of Hurtwood Edge, there's a fire still burning. Quiet, focused, but alive. And it roars to life every time Clapton turns the key. Cars. Ferrari SP12 EC. It starts here, with a car that's not just rare, it's one of one. A Ferrari built specifically for Eric Clapton by the brand's elite special projects division. Its name? SP12 EC. The EC isn't some random code, it stands for Eric Clapton. The design draws inspiration from his all-time favorite, the Ferrari 512 BB. But this isn't a vintage reissue. It's a modern beast wrapped in retro elegance, sleek piano black exterior, V8 engine, an estimated price tag of over $4.7 million. But you don't buy this car for status. You commission it when your name is already a legend and you want to pay tribute, not to yourself, but to something you love. For Clapton, this car isn't just about driving. It's about memory, precision, tone, just like the blues. Ferrari 275 GTS. Now imagine something softer, something that feels like a Sunday morning in Tuscany. The Ferrari 275 GTS, a convertible masterpiece from the 1960s, is less "look at me" and more "listen closely." Chrome details shimmer like the edge of a polished Stratocaster. The V12 engine hums like a blues riff on vinyl, warm, imperfect, alive. Clapton has said he sees guitars like women, each one with a personality, a shape, a tone. You get the feeling he sees cars the same way. The 275 GTS doesn't shout. It invites. It's the car you take when you don't want to go anywhere fast, just somewhere meaningful. Porsche 911 Turbo S. And then there's the practical side. If you can even call a Porsche 911 Turbo S practical. For all his bespoke Ferraris and hand-picked classics, Clapton still needs something for the everyday. But even then, he chooses something that fits his personality. Understated, composed, elegant. This car doesn't scream through the streets of Surrey. It glides, German engineering wrapped in British restraint. The Turbo S is fast, yes, 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. But that's not the point. The point is control, discipline, knowing when to hold back and when to open up and let it sing. Just like Clapton's phrasing on a slow blues solo. Simple, precise, devastating, more than machines. Every car in Clapton's garage has a voice, a tone, a story. They're not trophies, they're companions, extensions of a man who has spent his life fine-tuning emotion into sound, and now into movement. For most people, driving is transportation. For Clapton, it's composition. The road becomes a staff. The tires mark rhythm. And every curve in this country lanes of Surrey is a note waiting to be bent. But even a garage filled with millions in steel and soul can't measure up to the true weight of Clapton's legacy, because his greatest contribution isn't parked, it moves. So how much is a lifetime of heartbreak, redemption, and melody worth? In Eric Clapton's case, the answer is somewhere around $450 million. But you'd never know it by looking at him. No flashy watches, no gold chains, no entourage of yes men. Because Clapton's fortune, like his music, was built quietly, one note, one album, one honest performance at a time, through every life he's helped save, through every dollar he's raised, through every note he's given away, for good. Let's now explore Clapton's heart, not as a guitarist, but as a giver. Philanthropy. Before he built mansions, before he built a fortune, Eric Clapton built walls, walls to keep the pain out, walls to survive addiction, fame, and the unbearable weight of loss. But at some point, Clapton did something extraordinary. He stopped hiding behind those walls and started using them to shelter others. In 1998, after surviving his own descent into alcoholism and heroin addiction, Clapton made a decision. He opened the Crossroads Center, a non-profit treatment facility on the island of Antigua. This wasn't a celebrity pet project. It wasn't branded. It wasn't glamorized. It was personal. Clapton had been to hell and back, and now he wanted to leave the door open behind him for anyone else trying to crawl out of that same fire. Crossroads Center became a beacon. Set against the backdrop of Caribbean waters, it offered not luxury, but dignity. Not fame, but healing. And Clapton didn't just lend his name. He gave his time, his money, his guitars, his heart. He built it, brick by brick, note by note. To keep the center alive, Clapton turned to the one thing that had always saved him: music. In 1999, he launched the first Crossroads Guitar Festival, a gathering of the world's finest guitarists, many of whom had fought their own demons. Over the years, legends like B.B. King, Buddy Guy, Jeff Beck, John Mayer, Joe Walsh, Sheryl Crow, and Carlos Santana would share the stage, not for glory, not for fame, but for hope. Every ticket sold, every note played, every standing ovation was fuel for recovery. The festivals raised millions to keep Crossroads open, especially for those who couldn't afford treatment. But Clapton didn't stop there. He auctioned off pieces of his soul. In 1999, he sold guitars from every era of his career, raising $5 million. In 2004, he did it again, parting ways with more of his iconic instruments, including the beloved Blackie Stratocaster and guitars donated by fellow legends. That auction brought in $7.4 million. And in 2011, he let go of another 150-plus items, vintage amps, tour guitars, even stage outfits designed by Versace, all for one cause, Crossroads. That sale brought in another $1.3 million. Clapton wasn't just donating money, he was giving away history, memory, legacy. His giving didn't begin or end with addiction recovery. Back in 1981, Clapton performed at the Secret Policeman's Ball, a benefit concert for Amnesty International. He later supported the Prince's Trust, performing at galas and mentoring young talent. He even contributed tracks to charity albums like Aid Still Required, helping victims of the 2004 tsunami. But Clapton never made press tours about his philanthropy. There were no grandstanding interviews, no headlines begging for applause, because he wasn't trying to look good. He was trying to do good. You see, Clapton has always understood pain. He's lived it, played it, buried parts of himself because of it. And that's why his acts of kindness feel different. They don't come from guilt. They come from knowing what it feels like to fall, to lose a son, to wake up and not want to wake up. That's why every note from his guitar carries weight, not just technique, but truth. And every dollar he's raised, every life Crossroads has saved. It's all part of a much bigger song, one not heard on radio, but felt in the silence of a life reclaimed. But even the greatest giver needs a place to rest. So where does Clapton go when the applause fades, when the world stops asking for one more song? Let's step into the most personal chapter of all, his quiet life, beyond the stage, personal life. There was a time when Eric Clapton couldn't stay still, when the spotlight pulled him from city to city, stage to stage, hotel to hotel, a restless rhythm that mirrored the storm inside him. But these days, he walks slower, speaks softer, listens more. And tucked inside his country home in Surrey, he's finally found what he spent decades chasing through noise: peace. It began, strangely enough, in Ohio. After a show in 1998, Clapton attended a private party in Columbus. There, among the catered food and quiet small talk, he met a 22-year-old administrative assistant named Melia McEnery. Clapton was 53, world-weary, private, still carrying the weight of personal tragedy. But there was something about Melia. She wasn't dazzled. She didn't ask for autographs or anecdotes. She listened and smiled and stayed grounded. They dated quietly for a year. No paparazzi, no headlines, just walks, music, and dinners far from the tabloids. In 1999, they made it public, and on January 1st, 2002, they married in a quiet ceremony at St. Mary Magdalene Church in Ripley, the same village where Clapton was born. A full circle moment. From abandoned child to devoted husband, from lost boy to man building a family. Together, Eric and Melia have 3 daughters. And for a man who once defined himself through riffs and rhythms, fatherhood became a new kind of melody. Softer, steadier, deeply redemptive. Gone are the nights of excess. In their place, early mornings, family breakfasts, shared laughter over scrambled eggs and homework, walks through the Surrey garden with tiny footsteps beside his own. But the shadows never fully vanish. In 1991, Clapton's 4-year-old son Connor, from his previous relationship with Lori Del Santo, fell to his death from the 53rd floor of a Manhattan apartment. It was a tragedy that broke the world's heart, and his. From that grief came Tears in Heaven, a song not written for radio, not for awards, but for healing. It became one of the most painful and beloved ballads in music history, a raw, honest cry from a man who had lost the one thing he couldn't replace. To this day, Clapton rarely performs the song live, because some wounds don't fade with applause. Faith, too, became a companion, not the kind shouted from pulpits, but the kind whispered in gardens, in quiet prayers, in the patience he now has with himself and the world. He's spoken publicly about his Christian beliefs, about finding strength in surrender, about learning that being vulnerable doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. These days, you won't often see Clapton in red carpets or late-night interviews. He appears only when he has something real to say, an album to share, a cause to support, a friend to honor. The rest of the time, he's at Hurtwood Edge, reading, writing, walking the garden trails with his dogs, sitting on the terrace at golden hour with a Stratocaster in hand, not to rehearse, but just to feel. And when the chords come, they aren't for the world anymore. They're for him, for the boy who never felt seen, for the man who finally sees himself. But no matter how quietly he now lives, the world hasn't forgotten him, and perhaps neither has time. Let's close this story where it began. On the edge of a countryside, in a house filled with silence and a soul filled with sound. When we think of Slowhand, we remember the sound. But maybe we should remember the silence too. The stillness between the notes. The pause before the next breath. The man behind the myth. Because if Hurtwood Edge has taught us anything, it's that even icons deserve to sit down, take off the boots, and simply be. Which chapter of Eric Clapton's journey moved you the most? Was it the raw beginnings in Surrey, the Ferraris and blues, the tears, or the healing? Let us know in the comments below. And if you believe in stories that go beyond the stage, into the homes, the hearts, and the quiet lives of music legends, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the next chapter of music history is just one video away.